There's a reason Capricorn walks with silence. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they've already said too much through their actions, their sacrifices, their endurance. You see, Capricorn doesn't move for attention. They move for alignment. And most of the world doesn't see it. They see the hard exterior, the constant composure, the plans, the calendars, the goals. But they don't see the soul behind the structure. They don't see the quiet nights you cry but still keep going. They don't see the way you carry other people's burdens like they're your own. They don't see the silent battles you win without needing a trophy for proof. But you know who does see it. God does. And not the God shaped by social media memes or religious marketing, but the divine intelligence behind the cosmos. The source that built the stars, breathed into your soul, and designed your resilience with intention. Capricorn, this message isn't for everyone. It's not for those who only judge by the surface. It's for those who've ever whispered to themselves, "Does anyone see how much I carry?" Yes, God does. And more than that, God chose you to carry it. This is not another Zodiac video. It's a revelation. We're going beyond symbols and stereotypes. We're diving into the spiritual blueprint of Capricorn, a sign not just created for success, but for legacy, for divine service, for spiritual leadership through structure and sacrifice. In this sacred exploration, I'll reveal to you 12 divine truths, ways the universe, and the creator behind it, truly sees Capricorn. Not through fear, not through fame, but through faithfulness. And let me be clear, I'm not here to flatter you. I'm here to remind you, to help you remember what your soul has known long before this lifetime. Because Capricorn wasn't made to fit into the world. Capricorn was made to shape it. And yet, the world often overlooks you. They mistake your silence for coldness. They confuse your discipline with control. They call you too serious, too distant, too hard to reach. But what they miss, God never does. In fact, the very traits they misunderstand are the same traits the divine uses to build kingdoms through you. So whether you're a Capricorn yourself, or you love one deeply and wonder what's really going on beneath that stone-steady surface, this video is your mirror, your confirmation, your healing. We're about to unpack what God sees when no one else is looking. And by the time we reach the final truth, you'll realize you were never invisible. You were just sacredly designed to be seen differently. If you're new to this space, welcome to Zodiac Secrets Revealed. We don't do fluff here. We reveal what others miss. We connect astrology to the divine blueprint of the soul. And if this resonates with your spirit already, I invite you to subscribe right now and walk this sacred path with us. We're not here to entertain. We're here to awaken. Now take a breath, Capricorn. Let your guard down for a moment. Because for once, this message isn't asking you to be strong. It's asking you to be seen. Let's begin. Divine truth number 1. God sees Capricorn's discipline as sacred. Most people see discipline as a chore, as a restriction, a limitation, a burden. But not you, Capricorn. To you, discipline is devotion. It's focus. It's love expressed not in words, but in consistency. While others wait for motivation, you move with purpose. While they bend to distraction, you build the long road. And while they chase comfort, you chase character. The world sees this and calls you rigid. God sees it and calls you faithful. Because in a world where shortcuts are celebrated, Capricorn's discipline is a spiritual rebellion. A quiet act of loyalty to a vision bigger than themselves. You wake early when others sleep. You plan when others drift. You carry responsibilities most people never see. And you carry them with dignity, not complaint. And yes, God sees it. He sees the choices you make when no one's looking. He sees the moments you stay committed even when your soul is tired. He sees that you're not driven by applause, but by a deeper voice inside that says, "Keep going. It matters." Because to God, your discipline isn't about performance. It's about trust. He trusts you to stay steady when others scatter, to carry weight with wisdom, to lead not through charm, but through consistency. You don't follow every impulse. You follow structure. And that structure is where God shows up. Not in the chaos, but in the clarity you create. Not in the noise, but in the order you restore. Not in the fireworks, but in the foundation. Discipline has cost you things. You've missed out on the ease, the play, the instant gratification. But what you've gained in return? Legacy, endurance, self-respect. A bond with the divine that few understand. Because few are willing to walk the long road without applause. And when the world falls apart, it's not the loud who rebuild it. It's the disciplined, the dependable, the ones like you, Capricorn, those who built themselves to last. Life lesson. Discipline is not about control, it's about direction. Capricorn shows us that freedom doesn't come from doing whatever we want, whenever we want. It comes from aligning our daily actions with a higher purpose, one that serves not just ourselves, but generations to come. When you live with intention instead of reaction, you become a lighthouse in a storm, not just surviving, but guiding others home. So if the world calls you rigid, let it. You weren't made to be trendy, you were made to be timeless. Divine truth number 2. God sees Capricorn's pain as preparation, not punishment. Capricorn knows pain differently than most. Not as a brief season or isolated moment, but as a quiet companion along the road of responsibility. From a young age, many Capricorns feel it. The weight of being the reliable one, the unspoken expectation to be strong, to endure, to hold the line when others collapse. They weren't handed soft landings. They were handed pressure. Not because they were cursed, but because they were called. And here's the part no one says out loud. That pain wasn't random. That heartbreak, that disappointment, that betrayal you carried without protest. It wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The world often says, everything happens for a reason. But Capricorn lives through things that make them question the reason entirely. Because when you give your all and still lose, when you stay loyal and get hurt anyway, when you do the right thing and feel abandoned, it doesn't feel divine. It feels cruel. But from a higher view, there's something deeper happening beneath the struggle. Something sacred. You see, God does not waste pain. Not your pain. Not ever. Every hardship was refining your discernment. Every betrayal was sharpening your boundaries. Every closed door was forcing you to build your own. And every silent night, that was where your roots grew deeper. God never said Capricorn's path would be easy. He said it would be meaningful. He designed you not to float, but to withstand, to lead, to protect, to carry. And for that, you had to be forged. Because you weren't just made to succeed. You were made to last. And lasting requires pressure. The pain others escape from, you turn into wisdom. The rejection others collapse under, you turn into redirection. The isolation that breaks some only clarifies your purpose. This is why Capricorn walks with a gravity others don't understand. Because behind every silent look, every cautious move, every steady breath, is a lifetime of lessons earned the hard way. God sees it all. He sees how your pain has shaped your patience. He sees how your trials taught you truth. He sees how even in the most private moments of doubt, you still chose integrity over bitterness. That choice, that quiet decision to stay rooted when everything around you shook, that was your initiation, not into suffering, but into spiritual maturity. And God doesn't anoint the untested. He anoints the refined. Life lesson. Pain is not always a punishment. Sometimes, it's permission. Permission to rise, to redefine who you are, to create something real in a world obsessed with shortcuts and illusion. Capricorn reminds us that strength isn't built in moments of comfort. It's built in the nights no one applauded you, in the sacrifices no one recognized, in the wounds you didn't show. And while others may only see the surface, God sees the scars, and He honors them. You weren't meant to break, Capricorn. You were meant to build, even when the building starts with yourself. Divine truth number 3. God sees Capricorn as a foundation builder. Capricorn doesn't build for applause. They build for stability, for longevity, for legacy. Where others are satisfied with a good impression, Capricorn asks, but will it last? This mindset of depth over display isn't just a personality trait. It's a divine blueprint. Because God doesn't build his most sacred assignments on sand. He builds them on rock. And Capricorn is the rock. In the book of Matthew, there's a parable about two builders. One built on sand, the other on solid stone. When the storms came, and they always do, one collapsed, the other stood firm. This is Capricorn's calling. Not to avoid storms, but to prepare for them. To be the soul that others lean on when everything around them falls apart. They build emotionally, financially, spiritually. They're the sibling who becomes the backbone of the family. The friend who shows up without being asked. The colleague who holds things together when chaos breaks out. And they don't just build for themselves. They build for others. Even when no one says thank you. God sees the blueprints in your mind. He sees the late nights planning and revising. He sees the choices you make to protect structure even at the cost of personal rest. He sees how deeply you care, not in loud declarations, but in how you keep things functioning. Capricorn understands a sacred truth, that anything worth having must be built with patience. That integrity isn't just a value, it's a foundation. That legacy isn't made by rushing. It's made by returning to the same work every day, laying brick after brick, until what you've built can shelter generations. People often say, Capricorn is too serious. But the truth is, the world doesn't function without people like Capricorn. Without foundation builders, we have motion without direction, noise without purpose, movement without meaning. Capricorn provides the framework that allows others to thrive. That's not weakness. That's power in its most essential form. And yet, it can feel lonely. Because while others chase the finish line, you're still here laying groundwork no one will ever see. But God sees it. Every beam you reinforce, every emotional wall you strengthen, every quiet decision to hold the line when it would be easier to walk away. Because that kind of commitment, that's not just personality. That's spiritual architecture. Life lesson. In a world obsessed with speed, Capricorn teaches us the power of structure. You don't need to be the loudest in the room to shape the future. You need to be the one willing to build what lasts. Whether it's a family, a business, a belief system, or a healed version of yourself. What you're building matters. And while the world forgets foundation, the divine never does. Because what is seen may sparkle, but what is unseen holds the weight of everything. Capricorn, you are the structure others stand on. And in God's kingdom, that's sacred work. Divine truth number 4. God sees Capricorn as a leader, not a follower. Leadership, in today's world, is often mistaken for charisma, for volume, for influence. But true leadership, spiritual leadership, rarely looks like a spotlight. It looks like consistency under pressure. It looks like Capricorn. Capricorn doesn't chase titles. They carry responsibility before it's ever assigned. They don't raise their voice to be heard. They speak when it's necessary. And when they speak, people listen. Because their words aren't decoration. They're direction. And here's the part many overlook. Capricorn often becomes a leader by default. Not because they wanted control, but because when things fall apart, they're the only ones left standing. When others panic, they plan. When others hide, they organize. When others give up, Capricorn gets to work. That's not ego. That's alignment. Because in the divine design, God doesn't promote the loudest. He elevates the most reliable. In Exodus 18 verse 21, it says, "Select capable people who fear God, trustworthy people who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as leaders." That's not a call for fame. That's a call for integrity. And Capricorn, you've been walking that path for years, often without recognition. You've turned down shortcuts. You've chosen truth when it cost you friends. You've kept your word when others changed theirs with convenience. That's leadership. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that earns trust. But let's be honest. This kind of leadership is heavy, sometimes suffocating, because being the one everyone depends on means you don't always have someone to lean on yourself. You carry others' chaos in silence. You hold the emotional temperature of every room. And more than once, you've broken down privately, only to pull yourself together because there was no other option. But God sees this. He sees how your strength creates space for others to heal. He sees how your structure becomes their safety. And He didn't place this mantle on you to burn you out. He placed it because your spirit had been prepared. Capricorn doesn't lead with ego. They lead with presence. They show up. They hold ground. They lead with principle when others fold to pressure. And this world doesn't just need visionaries. It needs stabilizers. Souls who can stay centered when the noise gets loud. That's you. And God doesn't overlook leaders like that. He builds with them. Life lesson. Leadership isn't about commanding attention. It's about creating order in the unseen. Capricorn reminds us that the strongest leaders are often the quietest ones in the room. The ones who show up without fanfare. Who serve without asking. Who stay steady so others don't sink. If you've ever felt like the burden of leadership chose you, it did. But it didn't come to destroy you. It came to reveal you. You weren't made to be a follower of trends or noise. You were made to be a standard bearer. Someone others look to. Not for hype, but for hope. So don't doubt your place when the room gets loud. You weren't built to echo. You were built to lead. Divine truth number 5. God sees Capricorn's loyalty in the little things. In a world addicted to performance, where everyone's trying to be seen, heard, liked, and followed, Capricorn stands out for a different reason. They remain faithful. Even when no one is watching. They show up early. Even when no one says thank you. They finish what they start. Even when the reward is delayed. They follow through. Not because it's convenient, but because they said they would. This is the part of Capricorn the world often overlooks. But God doesn't. Because while others wait for the big stage, Capricorn earns trust in the shadows. Jesus once said in Luke 16 verse 10, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." That's the spiritual secret hidden inside every Capricorn. Their loyalty isn't situational. It's foundational. They don't just rise to occasions. They carry the everyday. They are the ones who double-check the details. Who remember the birthday no one else did. Who keep promises long after others have moved on. And that's not because Capricorn is obsessive. It's because they understand something most people miss. Loyalty is not proven when it's easy. It's proven when it's unnoticed. Capricorn doesn't make noise. They make history. One decision at a time. They stay committed when the feeling wears off. They keep building when others walk away. They honor their word even when it costs them comfort. That's not weakness. That's spiritual maturity. God sees this loyalty and calls it what it is. Preparation for greater purpose. Because the ones who are faithful in the small things are the ones who can be trusted with legacy. Let's be honest though. Loyalty like this often goes unthanked. It can feel like you're invisible. Like you're planting seeds that never bloom. Like your consistency doesn't matter in a world obsessed with chaos. But Capricorn, the universe is keeping score. And God doesn't just measure what's flashy. He multiplies what's faithful. Every time you chose integrity over impulse. Every time you remained steady while others quit. Every time you took care of what wasn't your job. You weren't being taken for granted. You were being watched by heaven. And the reward for that kind of character, it's not always instant. But it is inevitable. Life lesson. Big things don't just happen. They're built on small, loyal moments stacked one after another. Capricorn teaches us that showing up when it's boring, staying true when it's inconvenient, and honoring your word when it's lonely, isn't weakness. It's the very soil where destiny takes root. When you remain faithful to what's in front of you, you open the door for what's meant for you. And when others finally notice what you've built, you won't be surprised, because you'll know you didn't just wish for it, you worked for it, with loyalty that made the heavens pay attention. Divine truth number 6. God sees Capricorn as trustworthy beyond words. Some people talk about trust. Capricorn lives it. In a time where words are cheap and promises are temporary, Capricorn treats trust like a sacred bond. They don't offer it easily, and they don't break it lightly. When a Capricorn says, "I've got it," they mean it. Even if it costs them sleep, even if it means carrying more than their share, even if it means being the only one who shows up. Because for Capricorn, trust isn't a social tool. It's a spiritual responsibility. Proverbs 11 verse 3 says, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity." That verse is Capricorn energy. They don't need applause to keep their word. They don't change their values based on who's watching. They don't make decisions from impulse, but from alignment. They're the ones others confide in, because they know the secret will be safe. They're the ones people turn to when life falls apart, because Capricorn won't flinch, won't run, won't betray. But trust is heavy, and Capricorn carries it without complaint. They hold space for others' pain, even while hiding their own. They show up when they're exhausted, because they said they would. They stay silent when speaking out would serve ego, but hurt someone's soul. And even after betrayal, even after heartbreak, they rebuild. They heal. They forgive without forgetting. And they carry the lesson, not the bitterness. God sees this. Every quiet moment you chose integrity. Every time you could have cut corners, but didn't. Every promise you kept that no one else remembered. God sees your trustworthiness as a spiritual mark. Not just of maturity, but of mission. Because He knows this world doesn't just need leaders or dreamers. It needs people who can be trusted. To carry truth. To protect hearts. To stand when others fall. That's Capricorn. Not perfect, but principled. And God doesn't put spiritual weight into hands that won't honor it. Life lesson. In a culture that celebrates charisma, Capricorn teaches us the quiet power of character. Being trustworthy isn't about being liked. It's about being dependable. It's choosing values over convenience. It's showing up not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. And while that may go unrecognized by people, it's never missed by the divine. Because trust is the currency of the sacred. And if you carry it well, like Capricorn does, you become the one that heaven leans on. You weren't just made to be respected. You were made to be entrusted. And that's a calling few are built for. Divine truth number 7. God sees Capricorn's humility as true strength. Capricorn doesn't need a spotlight to feel valuable. They don't measure their worth by followers, fame, or attention. Because deep down, they've always known. Real power doesn't scream, it builds. And in that quiet building, there's something rare. Humility. Capricorn works hard without bragging. They achieve without announcing. They serve without needing applause. They lead without demanding to be followed. In a world that rewards showmanship, Capricorn chooses substance. And that choice doesn't go unnoticed, especially not by God. Micah 6 verse 8 offers a blueprint of sacred living. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. That's not just advice. That's Capricorn's rhythm. They don't walk into rooms needing validation. They walk into rooms carrying order, peace, and grounded presence. And when recognition comes, they don't inflate. They quietly nod, then get back to work. Because their mission was never about being seen. It was about getting it right. Humility isn't weakness. It's the strongest form of self-control. It says, I don't need to prove who I am. I just need to be who I am. Capricorn lives that truth. They don't elevate themselves above others. They don't exaggerate what they've done. They let their results speak. And while the world might overlook quiet confidence, God does not, because heaven promotes those who serve in silence before they lead in public. Let's be real though. Humility isn't always easy. It's misunderstood. It's underappreciated. And sometimes, it feels like being passed over while others shine. But Capricorn doesn't let that change their character. They don't chase clout. They stay rooted in purpose. And God sees it all. The choices you make to honor others before yourself. The grace with which you respond to envy. The way you carry strength without ever making others feel small. This humility, it's not passive. It's anointed. Because God can do more through a humble heart than through a prideful one full of talent. Life lesson. Humility is not about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less often, so you can serve a greater mission. Capricorn reminds us that the loudest person isn't always the strongest, and the most visible isn't always the most impactful. True power is quiet, grounded, certain. It doesn't chase applause. It chases alignment. And when you live like that, you don't just succeed. You become someone the divine can trust, elevate, and work through. So if the world hasn't clapped for you yet, it's okay. Heaven already has. Divine truth number 8. God sees Capricorn's wisdom as ancient and earned. Some people read books to learn. Capricorn lives life to understand. From an early age, Capricorns carry a strange sense of maturity. They're the children who felt older than their peers. The teenagers who carried adult responsibilities. The adults who carry generational burdens like second nature. It's not because they asked for it. It's because their soul remembers something older. And that's what makes Capricorn's wisdom so different. It isn't trendy. It's timeless. It wasn't taught. It was earned. Through mistakes. Through observation. Through loss. Through watching others fall apart while holding themselves together. Job 12 verse 12 asks, is not wisdom found among the aged? Does not long life bring understanding? Yes. But some souls are born old. Born with insight. With an inner compass others don't quite understand. That's Capricorn. They know things they've never been told. They sense patterns before they fully form. They're often the rock others turn to. Not just for stability, but for clarity. Because Capricorn doesn't just analyze, they discern. And that discernment, it's not intellectual, it's spiritual. But let's tell the truth. This kind of wisdom comes at a price. Capricorn rarely gets to be naive. They rarely get the luxury of immaturity. They've had to be strong when it was unfair. They've had to make adult decisions before they were ready. They've been the ones to hold the door while everyone else walked through. That shapes a mind differently. It sharpens intuition. It creates a depth that can't be taught. And while others seek truth in theory, Capricorn carries it in experience. That's why people come to them for advice, for perspective, for anchoring. Because Capricorn's wisdom feels earned, not borrowed. It feels real. God sees this. He sees how life has taught you things no textbook could. He sees how you've turned pain into perspective. How you've studied people not to judge them, but to understand them. He sees how you hold back words when you could easily win the argument. How you walk away to keep your peace instead of proving your point. How you choose what's right over what's loud. And he honors that restraint. Because wisdom isn't just about knowledge. It's about timing, truth, and trust. Life lesson. Wisdom doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers. It doesn't always shine. Sometimes, it hides behind stillness. Capricorn teaches us that being wise isn't about knowing it all. It's about living through enough to know what matters. You don't have to defend your depth. You don't have to explain why you see what others miss. You don't have to apologize for feeling like you were born into a world that moves too fast and thinks too little. Because your wisdom is not a burden. It's a gift. One that was given so you could help others rise. Not by force, but by example. And that is something heaven uses over and over again. Divine truth number 9. God sees Capricorn's stewardship over what others ignore. Some people are dreamers. Others are doers. But Capricorn is a steward. They don't just dream big. They manage the steps that turn vision into reality. They don't just talk about purpose. They protect it. They pay attention to what others overlook. They notice what's falling apart before it crumbles. They remember the details that everyone else forgets. And most of the time, they fix what isn't theirs to fix. Not because they have to, but because someone needs to. Capricorn doesn't wait to be asked. They simply take responsibility. And that's not just maturity. That's spiritual stewardship. In 1 Peter 4 verse 10, Scripture says, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms." Capricorn lives this verse without even knowing it. They serve not for applause, but because it's in their wiring. They take ownership where others drop the ball. They create order in chaos. And they do it without needing credit. They see something that needs care, and they care for it. They see someone hurting, and they hold space. And what may look like being responsible from the outside is actually a deep devotion to honor what matters. But let's be honest. Being the one who always holds things together can be exhausting. You remember birthdays others forget. You show up even when you're tired. You solve problems before others even realize there was a problem. And sometimes, it feels like no one sees it. Like your steadiness is being taken for granted. Like your sense of duty is being mistaken for having it all together. But God sees. And more than that, He entrusted you with this role. Because not everyone can carry what you carry without crumbling. Not everyone can protect without controlling. Not everyone can hold the emotional weight of a room and still be kind. Capricorn, your stewardship is rare. And heaven multiplies what it sees being handled well. You might not always get applause. You might not always be recognized. But every task you honor, every boundary you protect, every life you help organize, is part of something sacred. Because the divine doesn't just use preachers and prophets. He uses planners. He uses protectors. He uses people who show up and manage what others ignore. That's you. That's stewardship. And God trusts you with it. Because you don't take it lightly. Life lesson. Stewardship isn't just about doing. It's about honoring what's been given with focus, care, and integrity. Capricorn teaches us that the small tasks matter. That someone needs to remember, prepare, maintain, and protect. Not for attention, but for alignment. The world may forget who packed the bag, made the plan, or kept the system running. But heaven never forgets the ones who held the foundation while everyone else danced on top. So if you've ever felt unseen in your responsibility, know this. Your stewardship is sacred. And what you're building quietly now is preparing you for more than you can imagine. Divine truth number 10. God sees Capricorn's endurance as legacy-level strength. There are people who burn bright and fast. They show up with fireworks, and then disappear. But not Capricorn. Capricorn wasn't built for speed. They were built for stamina. They don't sprint. They climb. Steady. Silent. Relentless. And they don't stop until they reach what they came for. Not because it's easy, but because they know. Anything that lasts must be earned slowly. Capricorn doesn't crumble when the road gets long. They expect the road to be long. They're not surprised when obstacles appear. They're already mentally prepared for it. And that kind of endurance, that's not personality. That's divine assignment. Philippians 1 verse 6 says, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion." That's God's promise. But it's also Capricorn's instinct. They finish what they start. They don't chase trends. They build legacies. And while others grow tired, distracted, disillusioned, Capricorn keeps moving forward, sometimes crawling, sometimes alone, but always forward. Because their vision isn't about the moment. It's about the mission. Let's be honest though. Endurance isn't glamorous. It's lonely. It's exhausting. And it rarely comes with praise. Capricorn often watches others rise quickly, only to fall apart when things get tough. Meanwhile, they're still in the trenches, still building, still showing up, still doing the quiet work no one else is disciplined enough to commit to. And sometimes, they wonder, why does it always feel harder for me? Why do I have to carry more than others? But the answer isn't punishment, it's purpose. Because what Capricorn is building isn't for the season, it's for the generations. God sees this. He sees the nights you kept going when it would have been easier to quit. He sees the way you carry burdens silently. He sees how your commitment doesn't waver, even when the results are slow to come. And that kind of faithfulness, that kind of soul-level perseverance, it's what builds legacies. Not just for you, but for everyone who will benefit from your work long after you're gone. Capricorn, your endurance is a divine force, and it is shaping not just your life, but history itself. Life lesson. True strength isn't proven at the start, it's revealed at the end. Capricorn teaches us that staying power matters more than starting power. That showing up when it's boring, when it's hard, when it's thankless, isn't weakness, it's sacred grit. You may not be the loudest voice, you may not be the first to arrive, but you will be the last one standing. And in a world that quits too soon, that's how destiny is written. So if the path feels long, don't lose heart. God's not just watching, He's walking with you. And the finish line you're heading toward, it was never about applause, it was always about impact. And Capricorn, you were built to finish well. Divine truth number 11. God sees Capricorn's silent battles as sacred. There's a kind of battle most people never witness. Not because it isn't real, but because it's fought behind closed doors. In the silence, in the stillness, in the space where only the soul and God exist. Capricorn fights those battles. They don't make announcements when they're in pain. They don't collapse in public. They carry the weight with composure, because they feel they have to. People call them strong, but rarely ask what that strength is costing them. They say, "You're always so composed," without realizing that behind that calm exterior are 1,000 storms weathered in silence. Capricorn doesn't ask for help easily. They've been trained by life, by experience, by necessity, to self-soothe, to problem-solve, to hold everything together, even when they're falling apart on the inside. But what most don't realize is this: God is always watching the unseen. He sees every tear you don't let fall, every time you wanted to speak, but chose peace instead, every night you laid awake and kept going anyway the next morning. To the world, it looks like you're just responsible. To heaven, it looks like faithfulness under fire. There's a sacredness in suffering that doesn't seek validation, a kind of holiness in the struggle no one sees, the kind that only a few souls are called to endure. And Capricorn, you are one of them. Not because you deserve pain, but because your soul has been entrusted with resilience. And that resilience, it isn't just for you. It's to become a lighthouse for others, a source of quiet strength in a chaotic world. You didn't ask for the storms, but you chose to stand through them. And that choice didn't go unnoticed. God sees the silent battles. He sees the heartbreaks you never talk about, the responsibilities you never drop, the emotional burdens you carry for others. And He calls it holy, because what you've endured without recognition, what you've survived without applause, is becoming the anointing that will guide and heal others. You didn't need an audience. You just needed faith. And faith, you've had in abundance. Life lesson. The greatest victories often happen in the quiet. Capricorn teaches us that strength isn't about shouting through the storm. It's about surviving it in silence, and emerging on the other side still grounded, still kind, still whole. You don't need to broadcast your battle scars for them to matter. The universe has been keeping score all along, and while others may overlook your endurance, the divine never has. So if you're fighting something silently right now, know this: it's not unseen, it's not wasted, and it's not without purpose. God sees. And He is turning your private pain into public purpose. Divine truth number 12. God sees Capricorn's soul as chosen for eternal impact. Capricorn was never meant for small things. Not in vision. Not in spirit. Not in purpose. Their life may appear quiet from the outside. Structured, focused, even understated. But within that silence lives something rare. A soul chosen not just to succeed in time, but to shape eternity. Capricorn isn't here to impress the world. They're here to anchor it. To stabilize what others shake. To build what others abandon. To carry what others drop. And that calling, it doesn't come by accident. It's written in the soul. Breathed in before birth. Confirmed through every challenge they've faced. The truth is, Capricorn doesn't always feel chosen. They often feel overlooked, overloaded, isolated, like they're carrying more than they were meant to. But here's the divine revelation. You're carrying more, because you were made to carry more, not to be punished, but to prepare pathways, to create blueprints others will follow, to build lives, structures, legacies, that will outlive your name, but never forget your fingerprints. You see, God doesn't waste strength. And He never gives depth to a shallow assignment. Capricorn is one of the signs most attuned to legacy. They don't just want to do something good. They want to do something that lasts. Something that matters. Something that echoes far beyond their time on Earth. And that desire, that's not ego. That's divine coding. Because God doesn't just call the loud. He calls the loyal. The ones who stay steady. The ones who endure long winters. The ones who say yes to the process, even when it's painful. Capricorn, your soul was never meant for surface living. It was designed for impact that multiplies across generations. You weren't just made to build careers. You were made to build people. To build systems that heal. To build families that break old cycles. To build truth in a world full of noise. And while the world may never fully understand your depth, God does. He sees how you carry responsibility with grace, how you choose alignment over popularity, how you serve even when you're tired, and lead even when you feel alone. That kind of soul isn't accidental. It's intentional. It's cosmic. It's divinely chosen. Life lesson. You were not made to be temporary. You were made to be transformational. Capricorn teaches us that our deepest power doesn't lie in our appearance, but in our endurance, our values, our devotion to something greater. And while the world glorifies instant success, Capricorn reminds us that the most sacred missions take time. You are not behind. You are being built for something eternal. So walk with your head high, Capricorn, not with pride, but with peace. Because your soul isn't just seen by God. It's assigned. And your impact, it has only just begun. Conclusion. You were never ordinary, Capricorn. You were always meant to be seen this way. Now take a breath, Capricorn. Let it settle. You've just walked through 12 divine truths. Not from the world's perspective, but from a higher one. From the eyes of the Creator. From the wisdom of the universe itself. And here's what we now know without question. God sees your discipline as sacred. Your pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Your spirit is that of a foundation builder, brick by patient brick. You lead not with ego, but with steadfast presence. You remain loyal in the little things that no one else even notices. You are trustworthy when others are shaky. Your humility echoes divine power in its purest form. You carry ancient wisdom, earned, not borrowed. You are a steward, not just of plans, but of people's hearts. Your endurance is the silent force that shapes legacies. Your private battles are sacred grounds where God walks with you. And your soul, it was never meant to be loud. It was meant to be eternal. Capricorn, you are the kind of soul heaven trusts with long roads. Because you don't quit. You don't chase. You build. And while the world may overlook you for being quiet, God chooses you because of it. So if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever wondered whether all your effort matters, if you've ever asked, Does anyone really see me? Now you know. Yes, God does. And more than that, He's using your life to shape something far greater than you realize. You weren't made to sparkle for a moment. You were made to shine from within, over a lifetime, illuminating paths for others with your steadiness, wisdom, and truth. That's who you are. That's why you were born under Capricorn. And that's why you're still climbing. Not just mountains, but the very calling your soul was made for. Final message and call to action. If this message reached you today, don't let it end here. You're not alone. There are millions of Capricorns out there who need to hear this, who need to be reminded of what they carry, who need to remember who they are. So here's what I invite you to do. Subscribe to Zodiac Secrets Revealed. We don't do surface astrology. We go deep. We speak truth. We awaken souls. Turn on notifications, so you never miss when the universe has something more to say to you. Leave a comment below. Which divine truth hit you hardest? Was it the silent battles? The loyalty? The calling to lead? Your story might just be what someone else needs to keep going. And if this video moved something in you, share it. Don't keep it to yourself. You never know whose soul is waiting to hear exactly this. Because Capricorn, this isn't just another message. It's a mirror. And when you look into it, I hope you finally see what heaven's been seeing all along. You were never just climbing. You were always rising. And the view from where you're going, it will have been worth every step. You've got this. And we've got you. Until next time, keep building, keep trusting, and never forget. The divine doesn't forget the quiet ones. It uses them to change the world.